For over 20 years, DreamWorks Animation has created imaginative films with endearing characters, winning humor, and amazing visuals. And yet, I often see them regarded as a lesser studio and looked down upon. Then again, any American animation studio that's not Disney or Pixar is largely seen as unworthy by so-called animation fans. And I find that unfair, as many of them have produced work just as good as the ones made by the Mouse and Lamb. So I'm going to defend DreamWorks Animation and why they deserve to be respected as a top animation company. Throughout its history, DreamWorks has not been known for having a house style like other studios. I've often said they're a studio a lot like the chocolate box quote from Forrest Gump. You never know what you're going to get. The filmmakers there are open to experimenting and trying different kinds of stories. You definitely noticed that in the early years. That first film was Ants, a comedy with adult humor about an ant who tries to prove himself an individual in a colony full of like-minded insects. What do they follow that up with? A serious musical epic about Moses and the Exodus from Egypt. Then there was a Kipling-inspired adventure borrowed heavily from the Hope Crosby Road to Pictures, a collaboration with stop-motion studio Aardman centering on chickens planning a great escape, and finally a satire on fairy tales and Disney. This variety of stories and concepts continues to this day. Now, a lot of people will point out how in the 2000s there was an emphasis on comedies with talking animals and creatures making pop culture references. And yes, there was a string of those, starting with Shark Tale and continuing on to arguably Monsters vs. Aliens. However, even in those movies, there was artistry, heart, and themes on display. I know B-movie has since become a meme, but I've always found that to be a clever Seinfeldian comedy with magnificent flying scenes and a solid commentary on the importance of respecting the bee's role in our ecosystem. Over the Hedge, similarly, was a sly comment on suburbia. And you also have the Kung Fu Panda trilogy, which began during that era of DreamWorks. A simple concept of a panda wanting to be a kung fu master became a beautiful story of this panda's journey. Alongside Poe's comedic hijinks, the filmmakers crafted genuine action films with a lot of pathos. This was intentional on the part of original directors John Stevenson and Mark Osborne, who really wanted to make an actual martial arts film, and you notice the respect these films have towards the genre. Looking at the directors who made films for DreamWorks Animation, it's clear these are all extremely talented individuals, whether they come from visual effects, storyboarding, or animation, and each bring their own perspective to these movies. A notable example is Tom Mcgrath, who got his start as an animator or storyboard artist on a number of projects before being hired at DreamWorks to direct Madagascar. Through those films, as well as Megamind and The Boss Baby, Mcgrath has been shown to be a director with a love for fast-paced action and moving the camera around. He's not afraid of including surreal imagery or playing with the color palette either. Even though the studio is most recognized for comedies, the filmmakers have also shown an affinity for world building and making grand sweeping dramatic epics. Again, I bring up Kung Fu Panda. And you also have the How to Train Your Dragon series, which made great use of its Nordic-inspired locations in telling its saga of a young man and his dragon companion. Films like Rise of the Guardians, The Croods, and Abominable also took us to amazing worlds and created a strong mix of drama and stakes with more lighthearted elements. Even Shrek Forever After took a chance and saw Shrek cope with a warped alternate version of his reality. And Puss in Boots placed the cat in a swashbuckling adventure befitting this Zorro-esque feline. Something that DreamWorks is often derided for are the amount of sequels they make. However, the studio has never made a sequel where there was not an audience demand for it. Even Shrek they knew to stop at the fourth chapter, despite it still generating a lot of box office dollars. You may scoff at Madagascar or Trolls or The Boss Baby getting sequels greenlit, but they were audience crowd pleasers, much as that may annoy animation Twitter. Even though animation nerds think they have some say in the box office results, they really don't. It's families and the general public who control what movies are hits and become franchises, and which ones just become cult favorites. However, I do find DreamWorks has a solid track record when it comes to making sequels that are as good or even better than their predecessors. The Kung Fu Panda and How to Train Your Dragon trilogies are consistently strong in my opinion, and I enjoyed The Croods: A New Age as much as the first, which is to say a lot. I also thought Trolls World Tour and Madagascar 2 improved on the first installments. The Boss Baby 2 looks like it's up the bonkers factor of the premise, and I'm honestly looking forward to it, despite my indifference to the first movie. I'm also fascinated by DreamWorks making a decades later sequel to Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron, based on the Netflix show. I guess that scored big ratings for DreamWorks and Universal to consider releasing a theatrical movie, so there must be something appealing in it. Another thing DreamWorks is criticized for are the movies that actually aren't made, despite sounding very promising. And yes, Me and My Shadow, Larrikins, and Monkeys in Mumbai are all movies I was really looking forward to and was disappointed when they were cancelled. Not to mention Boo, Bureau of Otherworldly Operations, which was very close to completion before the plug was pulled. However, I think people direct too much anger towards the movies that did end up getting released, like it's their fault or something. The truth is, some films moved forward and others didn't. That's normal in Hollywood. Nobody sneakily went to Jeffrey Katzenberg's office and whispered to him, "Hey, forget that Shadow movie, make Boss Baby instead." Something I want to compliment DreamWorks Animation on is their growing television division. The studio has dabbled in television shows before, with the adult series Father of the Pride, and shows based on Kung Fu Panda and the Penguins of Madagascar. However, DWA has really gone to full swing in recent years, especially partnering with Netflix and other streaming services. Their movie-based shows like Dragon's Race to the Edge, Dawn of the Croods, and The Epic Tales of Captain Underpants are worthy companion pieces in my opinion. They've also taken advantage of the classic media properties they acquired, resulting in smartly written series like She-Ra and the Princesses of Power and Harvey Girls Forever. I've heard a lot of positive things about Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beast and the Tales of Arcadia series too, although I'm sorry to say I've not watched them yet. Despite their variety, a lot of people assume DreamWorks makes one type of movie. I remember when the trailers for Onward were released, the comment I kept seeing was that it felt like a DreamWorks movie rather than a Pixar movie, and I thought to myself, can you be a little more specific? Because How to Train Your Dragon is not the same movie as Monsters vs. Aliens, which is not the same movie as Abominable, which is not the same movie as Captain Underpants, which is not the same movie as Kung Fu Panda, which is not the same movie as Rise of the Guardians. I guess people's mindset is that DreamWorks just makes Shrek, but Onward isn't anything like Shrek either. Aside from both having fantasy creatures, they have nothing in common. That applies to both the story and the designs. I think what's also annoying about people dismissing something as it looks like a DreamWorks movie is how insulting that is to DreamWorks and the vast library the studio has built since its founding in 1994. I look forward to watching every new DreamWorks Animation movie because I honestly don't know what I'll get. Will I watch a wacky comedy with crazy situations and offbeat visuals? Or will I see a sweeping drama with a lot of adventure and excitement? How about a social commentary poking fun at an aspect of modern life? More often than not, I'll be enchanted by the stunning visuals, be compelled to follow their characters on a journey, laugh myself silly at their funny and creative jokes, or end up responding emotionally to what happens on screen. I also want to shout out the musical scores in DreamWorks movies, which are often brilliant, beautiful, and catchy. And from all accounts, the animators and artists working at DreamWorks Animation are proud of the work they do. I've noticed some people assume they must be miserable making movies about trolls or talking babies, but actually reading interviews and seeing what the artists post on social media, they've put an enormous amount of passion and hard work into creating those movies and hoping the audience is enthralled and entertained. Whether DreamWorks chooses to produce a serious David Lean-style epic or a ridiculous comedy about a talking animal of some kind, I'll be watching. Thank you to everyone at DWA for the stories you've told and the worlds you've taken us to. See you next time.